Hi guys, my name's Karen, I'm an alcoholic. If you're just arriving, welcome to the International Conference of Secular AA 2020, our virtual first. This panel discussion is called It Came from London and includes members from London Secular AA, where the leaflet, The God Word, Agnostics and Freethinkers in AA originated. They will discuss how we collectively can create a way forward for more of a secular AA voice in our literature and open so we have more secular literature widely. Each of the three panelists will kick off with 5 or 6 minutes of commentary, and then get ready because we'll open up after that for questions and answers and discussion. Our first speaker is Cyril C from London AA Freethinkers Group. Take it away, Cyril.
Thank you very much, Karen. My name is Cyril and I'm an alcoholic. And after the last workshop, I do want to say that I'm crystal clear that as a lifelong atheist in AA, I want to stay in AA and change it for the better. I think John Stewart is absolutely correct. Demography and science are on our side as this century unfolds, and our time has come, believe you me, particularly with the Zoom world opening up in the way that it has. Anyway, I was the GSR for the London Freethinkers Group, which started the process in the UK, which resulted in the publication of the God Word Leaflet, after several years of very, very frustrating struggle with the establishment of AA in the UK. It would take me too long now to tell you all the twists and turns of that tortuous process, but you can read a summary of events we recently posted on the Beyond Belief website. I'd like to tell you about the two initiatives we've already taken in London, starting with the God Word Leaflet. We've been over the moon by how well it's been received since its recent publication. It's been approved for worldwide distribution, has been translated into Spanish and French, has sold 120,000 copies in the US and Canada alone up until last year, and it's now available free online worldwide. It's the first leaflet we're aware of in AA history which has given the imprimatur of the fellowship to the thoughts and personal stories of freethinkers in AA, and confirms what we've all known forever, that we are entitled to the same respect, courtesy and dignity as all other members of AA. We also learnt that AA moves at glacial speed, and that many traditional members sadly feel misunderstood by we freethinkers, who they mistakenly feel are an existential threat to their belief in God or a higher power, probably because we just don't talk to each other enough. What I've learned through life is that quite simply, people either have faith or they do not. And it's futile to try and argue the case purely from a rational or intellectual basis. Once that can be accepted, so we can truly live and let live, mutual respect and tolerance can follow. But blimey, as the last workshop showed, it can be a slow and frustrating process. This first leaflet is very far from perfect, mainly because the content was vetted by the UK Literature Committee and not by us. But it has established an important principle and model on which to build. So we hope to see it constantly updated and more new publications added, with your help, of course. And the second initiative I'd like to mention is about the latest redraft of the Big Book in North America. We became aware that there are plans to produce a 5th edition redraft following a conference decision last year. The remit is to consider the accessibility and relatability of the Big Book to help reach more suffering alcoholics and help them understand the 12 steps in plain language. And the literacy level they're aiming for is year 6 students, which I believe would be 11-year-olds. Our group wrote to GSO New York to check if this 5th edition was still going ahead, and they confirmed yes, it was likely once the matter is returned to this year's conference for approval. GSO New York have been very complimentary in acknowledging the service we have done in having our leaflet published. And so we have made a formal request to be consulted and included in any deliberations about the 5th edition, as we believe we have an important contribution to make as freethinkers and in encouraging newcomers to stay. It remains to be seen how extensive this redraft will be, but I guess many of us here would want to start with chapter 4. Personally, I'd like to challenge head-on the 1995 decision that the first 164 pages must never be amended, a bit like the 10 Commandments, I suppose. Yes, there will be fierce resistance and it may take years to achieve, but we must have the confidence to stand up and speak truth unto power. And I firmly believe the tide of history is on our side on this one, as these pages are very, very badly flawed and could be easily improved. Failing that, I hope we can persuade people that the big book can be seen as an important historical document from 1939, but that 80 years on, we can reflect the huge advances we have made in our understanding of alcoholism and produce a new 164 pages fit for the 21st century. We would like to suggest to all the groups represented at this conference to bring this issue of consultation to your respective group conscience meetings and invite you to make similar approaches to New York GSO, so they have a unified approach from hundreds of free-thinking groups everywhere at the same time. We see this as a perfect model to illustrate how we should proceed collectively where possible from this point on. Zoom has given us a unique and spectacular opportunity to connect with each other around the world in a way which would have previously have taken decades of networking, not to mention the air miles and the impact on the environment. Zoom has let the genie out of the bottle and changed AA for the good in an irrevocable way. We should seize this incredible opportunity to network, cement global friendships, and for some of us, stop hiding in the shadows for fear of rocking the boat. Our guiding star has always been the responsibility statement and finding a way to have our global voice heard with good humour and great ideas. And a more fabulous, inclusive fellowship will result in many more newcomers joining and staying in AA. And I don't think there's anything more important for our future health in the 21st century. My final thought is a heartfelt plea for us to always adopt a diplomatic and empathetic approach in our dealings with wider AA, rather than one of direct confrontation and challenge. If we are to truly call ourselves freethinkers, then all views are valid and should be mutually respected. And of course, from a rational point of view, I believe this gives us the most realistic chance of achieving the outcome we all want. So I see it as a win-win. And with that, I'll now hand over to Antonia, who is going to talk about our current thoughts on using alternative literature in the UK. So it's over to you, Antonia. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Cyril, for a great introduction. It's a privilege to be here. I'm Antonia and I'm sober in Alcoholics Anonymous. Cyril said that Zoom has let the genie out of the bottle and changed AA for good and forever. I know that it has freed my previously stifled, dismissed, ignored, put down, free-thinking creative spirit. Freethinkers now have a voice. No more linguistic gymnastics. I've found my tribe within the tribe. I'm home. I have never met Cyril or Brendan in person, or any of my Zoom sponsees, or the hundreds of people from around the world that I see weekly and share experience, strength, and hope with. What I want to talk about is Freethinkers Step meetings in the UK, the literature we use, and what more do we need? First, the UK meetings. BC, before coronavirus. There were a handful of face-to-face atheist, agnostic and freethinkers meetings in the UK. These are now held on Zoom and have been joined by some exciting new meetings which are Zoom only. They will not return, or they will stay on Zoom, no bricks and mortar. Cyril represents a group of meetings in London. I'm from the Stonehenge meeting west of London, and Brendan is from a meeting at Rainham to the east of London. I'd like to tell you how we approach the use of literature in our step meetings. Between us, there are 3 weekly step meetings and 2 topic meetings, which also discuss the step of the month. They are all on the secular meeting list. So how do they work and what literature do they use? Mondays, a new Atheist and Rationalist Staying Sober Without God step meeting, where they read Geoffrey Munn's Staying Sober Without God, followed by sharing from the group. Tuesdays, the well-established, 10 years it's been going now, London Atheist Agnostic Freethinkers Step. They read the summary of the step from the front of the traditional 12 by 12 and have a speaker. Wednesdays, the new, and I have to say, totally awesome, Stonehenge AA Freethinkers Step currently reads Staying Sober Without God, then open for sharing. And the 2 monthly steps, on the first Friday of the month, the new London AA Freethinkers invite a speaker on the step of the month who may include a reading of their choice, but no specific literature. On the first Saturday of the month, Rainham AA Freethinkers have a reading from Staying Sober Without God and an invited speaker. So you'll see that each group has developed its own approach to literature. There's no right way. It has to be what works for the group. In the UK, Staying Sober Without God is very popular and also has a workbook. At Stonehenge, we've started with this, but we are keeping an open mind. Not a bad idea for Freethinkers, and are prepared to move on to other texts as our meeting grows and develops. So finally, what further literature do we need? Now, in all of this, we have been at pains to avoid alienating traditional AA. We have tried to take a diplomatic and empathetic approach. We really are better together. But if AA does not approve texts which match our beliefs, then as you have seen, some groups are prepared to use unapproved material, although I'd add that just because a text has not yet received AA approval, we should not assume that it is forbidden. How many copies of Freethinkers Step books have been sold by Mr. Amazon? AA is missing out on the revenue they and other books might bring. I'd love to see a UK meeting using Beyond Belief, Agnostic Musings for 12-Step Life. Perhaps Josie can give us a good deal on it and repay us the favour we did him by sending him all the boxes of the wonderful God Leaflet that he was talking about earlier. But we also know that some groups have no choice but to adapt the wording of the traditional big book, the 12 and 12. Living Sober is fairly secular. At Stonehenge, we end with a serenity statement using the words, I seek the serenity. But surely in the 21st century, either a range of literature should be approved and encouraged to cater for all opinions and beliefs, and the main text, like the big book, should be inclusive, non-divisive, or discriminatory, and able to be used or adapted, whatever your beliefs. So, as well as asking my group conscience to submit questions to the GSC about the rewrite of the big book that Cyril has mentioned, I shall also be lobbying for the approval of secular literature like Staying Sober Without God and Beyond Belief, and I hope that you will do the same. Step meetings are not the glamour side of our programme. They take commitment, concentration and hard work. And AA meetings are not TV shows competing for ratings, who can get the best speakers. Every share matters. I don't know about you, but I take a deep breath before speaking on Zoom, and I take an even bigger breath when I'm done. And I dare say everyone listening, like today, also heaves a massive sigh of relief when I'm finished. And with that, I'll hand over to Brendan.
Thanks a million, Antonia. Good evening, everybody. I'm Brendan, an alcoholic. And as Antonia mentioned earlier, I'm a member of the Rainham Freethinkers Saturday group in East London. Anybody who knows me will know I've got no problem talking, but never to so many people. So if I get tongue-tied or I get a blank, just feel free to fill in the words. Anyway, Cyril and Antonia, I think, has more than made the argument for how important Freethinkers literature is, and how we might go ahead and get some more literature approved and adopted. But I don't have to add to anything that they've said. They've made the arguments really well. So I'm just going to have, for a few minutes, just concentrate on maybe the mechanics of what we need to do, and just pose more questions really than anything else to get the discussion going for when I'm finished talking. The other thing is, I'm a very shy person as well. So there will be a few slides going up there for just a few minutes. So you'll have to bear with me if and when I go to the slides. I'm going to talk just on two items. One will concentrate for a couple of minutes on our existing meetings and what I think we in general tend to use. And I'll make a few suggestions, a few thoughts on what I think we could be using as we go forward in AA for Freethinkers and the rest of AA as well. And I'll just finish off as well, if I think there's time, to pose a few questions as to how we might go forward in staying together as one, as Freethinkers. Stay not just in terms of when we get the literature to make sure we get it right, but also how we communicate with each other, because I think that's pretty important as well. So I mentioned, first of all, I'm just going to chat a little bit about the meetings that we have. And I think I've been to secular meetings now, Freethinkers meetings in the UK, on Zoom in Ireland, and obviously Zoom in North America. And I think it's fair to say, and I know this isn't an exhaustive list in any way, that we start off generally with the AA preamble. Then a lot of us seem to have a mission statement for our Freethinkers meetings. Then we'll probably end up sometimes with the responsibility statement and the Declaration of Unity, all very useful and helpful. As I said, that's not an exhaustive list, and I'm sure in the discussion people will talk about more. Now, I'm just going to turn on one of my slides there. I mentioned there about a mission statement. I called it the preamble plus, but last night was at a meeting where somebody took issue with the fact that we should call them a mission statement. That's the one that we use at our meeting there. I won't read it all out, just to say that a little bit of it says, we read the preamble and then we say, this AA group will always attempt to maintain a tradition of free expression and conduct a meeting where alcoholics may feel free to express any doubts, disbeliefs, or indeed beliefs. I won't read all of that, but I think you have a flavour of what it is I'm talking about. And very recently, it actually was yesterday when we were talking, Cyril mentioned that, and I think I'm inclined to agree, that it would be wonderful if we were all to maybe agree going forward, not all, but whatever your groups decide, if we were able to include the sentence, there are people here who care about you. And I think that is a very, very lovely sentence for anybody new coming along. And indeed, any of us that have been around for a little while, and if we're having a day when we're feeling pretty low, that's a lovely thing to hear at any meeting. There are people here who care about you. And I think that's lovely. Now, I'm just going to touch on a few thoughts that I've had on this as well. It's been mentioned already, there are meetings. I know about Tradition 4, and it's wonderful, the autonomy that all of us have in our groups, but just sort of in a cohesive way. And I'm going to nick a couple of words there that Cyril used earlier on. You can tell I wasn't as prepared as Cyril and Antonia. He used the words unified approach. And I think that's probably what was on my mind during the week, about how we could have a unified approach in our Freethinkers meetings. And in that way, that gives people sort of a lot of comfort. But indeed, it makes us all part of the whole, if you like, staying under the main umbrella of AA. And you can see on the slide there, I've said if maybe we were to agree with a couple of nuances for North America, the rest of Europe or wherever, templates on things like our discussion meetings, our topic meetings and step meetings, in things like, for example, the mission statement that we all use, that most of us seem to use. Traditional AA down through the years have had the use of table cards and wall cards as well. And I think maybe if we were to put our heads together, we could come up with some pretty useful table cards and wall cards as well, which would sort of remind us as to what we're doing in our meetings, and certainly bring forward the message to the newcomer as well, what we're all about. Maybe, possibly, a little more controversially as well, I would suggest maybe we start thinking about, if groups haven't done it already, getting the 12 steps up on scrolls. And you'll see I've put in there as well that we'd acknowledge the 1939 suggested version, so as not to upset anybody. But when I said the 12 steps on the larger scrolls, obviously that is whatever an individual group would choose. I'm not saying that they would have to be the same set of 12 steps. There are many. I would probably hazard to say there are probably hundreds at this stage of secular 12 steps out there. But this is all just food for thought and not something that I would ever even think of that we would be imposing on each other. One personal suggestion, one that I personally like, I was wondering if maybe Freethinkers meetings, if we were to adopt the notion of the AA History Corner, including, of course, the AA Big Book in there. Cyril as well has mentioned how in areas it's flawed, and I hope I haven't used the wrong word there. But I've been reading a lot during the week, and I had come across this quite a lot of times in the past, but it really did strike a chord with me that in AA Comes of Age, in page 81 of it, Bill W. himself had said, "We must remember that AA steps are suggestions only. A belief in them as they stand is not at all a requirement for AA membership. This liberty has been made available to thousands who never would have tried at all had we insisted on the 12 steps just as written." It's amazing. I think a lot of traditional AAs, and without having a pop at anybody in particular, a lot of traditional AAs seem to think that the Big Book was written in 1939 and nothing else was written or approved of. And when in actual fact, when you think about that, Bill W. himself, and that's why I think I would like to endorse the notion of AA History Corner in certain meetings or an archives, Bill W. himself more than pinpointed the way towards secular AA. And I think it would be a shame if we didn't actually look to some of the things he had said in the 50s and 60s himself. Just moving on, and the other, I just threw that in there just to be a little bit cheeky. We often have heard about don't throw the baby out with the bathwater, and that's something that I don't think we'll be doing in secular Freethinkers AA. I think we should protect the baby. We all know what that is. For me, it's fellowship. And certainly it is time for a bigger bath than with fresh water. I'm not trying to be rude or crude in saying that, but I think it's very, very important that, yes, we do protect the baby. What was created from 1939 onwards was a huge and brilliant start to what we have today. That's it on the meetings. I'll just quickly then talk a little bit about what it is I would suggest maybe we need to do if we were to carry any of these ideas forward and many of the other ideas. Some of the things I was thinking that maybe we should do or maybe look at if it hasn't been done already. So I'm here to learn tonight as well. I'd love to know how many Freethinkers groups there actually is now across the globe, and in particular since the pandemic came along. Also, maybe we need to start thinking about where and when we should be meeting up for Freethinkers. And I don't suppose anything beyond Zoom is necessary at the moment. I know there are other platforms. I love the idea that maybe in Europe we could have a convention. I know there has been, I think there would have been, the fourth one would have taken place this year had it not been for the pandemic. But I think certainly in terms of promoting any literature that we create, in promoting good relations with each other, conventions are a good idea. Also, just to more firmly lay down the lines of communication we have, the websites that we have. I know that Secular AA is a website that we visit quite a lot. So maybe there's a need to start looking at honing in on something that we can all go to, a kind of a go-to place. Something else that I realized came up, maybe not so much for our North American friends or other areas of the world, but my group is registered with General Service at York. And here I'm back again. And I know you all missed my lovely pretty face, but I'm back here again. Yeah, we registered at York this year, but we don't have a UID number. Now, I know that COVID created huge problems, so maybe it's just an administrative thing. But I do think as well that if any of our meetings are going forward, and we have all this good literature that we want to promote and do everything else and stay together, it's very important that our General Services offices embrace us as much as we want to embrace them. It's a two-way thing here. Whatever we think needs doing, whatever we know needs doing, and I certainly do agree with Cyril and the approach that he suggested and some of the things that Antonia said. But you know, it's a two-way street as well. We have to make sure that we're taken and loved with both hands as well by our General Services office. So I've said more than enough. As I said, I was posing more questions than I was going to anything else. And those questions are just a few that I'm sure the rest of you might have. If I have left anything out and haven't put any meat on the bones there, please come back and verify with me. So I just want to summarize. I just did mention a few things about the meetings we have. I would love to see us have a nice structured approach so that wherever we go in the world, I know it can't always be the same, that when you walk into a meeting of AA, and if it is a Freethinkers meeting, we all feel the same comfort and sense of AA that we have. And secondly, just to have a consideration maybe for the rest of the discussion we're going to have on how are we going to do this? What's the best way forward? And take it from there. I've said more than enough. Thank you ever so much. Thank you, Karen, and well done to the organisers of this. Fantastic. Thank you so much.
Thanks so much, Cyril, Antonia and Brendan. That was excellent. What we'd like you to do now, we'd like to open up the rest of the time we have for raised hand sharing. So if you've been in a Zoom meeting before, there's a participants box at the bottom of your reading pane. And if you click on there, then you'll be given an option to raise a blue hand. If you don't have that option, just wave frantically and I'll try and see you, although there is over 100 of you here. So I'll do my best to get everybody to share. Bear in mind, because there's a lot of you here, please try and just keep questions or comments, to around 3 minutes or so. We will need to end at about 5 to 3, just to make time for the next speakers to settle in and arrive. Okay, so the floor's open. If you'd like to, like I said, if you'd like to raise hands, then we can.
Just great thanks. Obviously, I'm now a member of the Friday group that you were talking about, and it's great to be here. One of the things that I'd just like to mention is this word secular, and how secular is part of a lot of British government stuff, including the NHS and various charities. And just to say that up until fairly recently, I was a member of Samaritans, which offers help to people that, especially, suicide is one thing, but people who just need help online. I'm no longer a member of Samaritans because Samaritans won't let us use AA to help those people who phone in with alcohol problems. And the reason that they won't allow us to use AA, although they used to be major supporters of AA in the UK, is because AA is viewed by them as a religious organisation because of, and nothing more than the 12 steps, but you only have to read those first 164 pages to come to that conclusion. Also, the NHS were not happy with AA becoming involved in hospitals because we were viewed as a religious organisation. So I think the great works, the great help that AA is able to give to people with alcohol-related problems is being denied because of the reputation that we have, which is unwarranted. And I'll just leave it.
And next up we have Calvin.
So this is my first time at this type of conference, and it's just been mind-blowing, really. I just cannot, I've learned so much and I've heard such great ideas. I've just been sober for over 2 years, and most of my sobriety has been in, I think somebody else has their mic open. I'm getting an echo. Anyway, most of my sobriety has been in agnostic AA. So I guess what I'm about to say, and I don't want to cause a flurry of bad ideas or feelings, but I sometimes question why agnostic AA / atheist doesn't break off from AA, because to me, it seems like traditional AA, and this has just been my experience where I live, they kind of tolerate us, we're not really included in a lot of the stuff they do. And I just feel that traditional AA and, you know, the big book and the things that are said about it and the way the steps are done, I don't know. I sometimes question how the two worlds can really live together. And that's just an observation. Again, I'm just over 2 years sober. I really enjoy agnostic AA, and but I do wonder about that. I wonder if we're just butting heads all the time, and if it would be easier to break off.
Yeah, thank you. I'm Marianne. I'm an alcoholic. I just would kind of plus one to a lot of what I'm hearing in the chat or reading in the chat about not breaking off entirely. I think what concerns me really is mostly newcomers and people who are trying to get help and all they know is AA, and it has a lot of amazing and important features. It's huge. Their fellowship is strong. The steps are amazing. If you work, I've worked a secular version of them and they are transformative. And I think losing all of that would be a miss. I think the fact that people are coming together and talking about how to make change from within is really powerful. And I hope that we can all kind of take that forward. You know, there's a lot we can do at individual group level, a lot we can do at GSR level. I'd love to see some language changing in the book, not just to kind of, change some of the God language, but to make it not so ridiculously sexist. You know, there's just a lot that we could do that could be helpful. So I don't know. I just wanted to give a little plug to let's work together to try to change from within, and know that there's a bunch of us, and know that we support each other, and feel empowered to speak up and to try to come together and make change. Because what really, really scares me or concerns me is just that newcomers come in, they hear the word God, and they're back out again. And that's a real miss. So anyway, that's all I got. Thanks, you guys.
Yes. Hi, I'm Mike, alcoholic. I've attended some of your meetings, and by the way, thanks for the presentations. Very well put together. There's one thing you didn't mention that I think needs to be highlighted, and that's your focus on newcomer reps. That's something that struck me right away, and it's something that I proposed for the Toronto group as well. I think what we lose sight of with the pandemic right now is how hard it is for somebody new to AA to get the help that they need. And I think that your group does a great job of kind of putting some people out there that they can talk to directly and get the information that they need. So I think that's very beneficial, and I think you need to play that up more. The other thing is, I've been thinking about the whole breakaway if we're not getting the response. Obviously, our group in Toronto was having to fight in court to be included with the AA listings for a number of years. And the thing is, yes, they have the brand recognition. So if anybody's coming in, they're coming into AA. So we still need to be in there. But I think we are getting more kind of traction and leverage because of how popular these meetings are getting to be on Zoom. And we're building up a great community, I think. And what we need is that momentum moving forward, so that we can show the people in charge of AA that we are kind of a force to be reckoned with. So anyway, thank you. Very informative.
That's better. As a newcomer, it's hard enough to go into AA. I'm not sure that I wouldn't have found secular AA had it not been for a rehab facility. And from a newcomer's perspective who has benefited greatly from secular, part of what Brendan's saying about locating where our meetings are going on, what I kind of want to do is, I've been so fortunate to be around the likes of Cyril and Antonia and Brendan, and people who I really think are kind of like figureheads for this Zoom secular movement. I know there's more of them out there. I kind of want them to get together and make this new framework for us. And in 20 years' time, when I've got your guys' level of sobriety, I might feel like going and saying, like, we're strong enough now to go and be our own thing. But I really think that there is such a great international secular presence that has really helped out me, and me as just one individual person who hated AA, walked out of meetings so many times, but had nowhere else to go for help. And there's going to be differences across regions and countries and everything, but I think if there is a common underlying framework, and I think we've got some really great people to do that. Yeah, so part of it is just me saying thank you, and part of it is me saying that I think it's a great platform. But that's all I have to say, but thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Karen. Hi everyone, my name is John. I'm Zoba. Yeah, thanks to everybody who's putting this on. I wanted to make a point about standardization, and I'll say something from a personal point of view and then make a general point. From a personal point of view, I get sick of going to meetings where you have the same thing said over and over again, and even the intros as well. And it's quite nice to have different introductions, actually, and different things that might be written on cards, perhaps, as well. I've often wondered why, even in normal meetings, why each meeting couldn't write their own preamble. I mean, it's the kind of task you could set a 12-year-old to do for their homework. But meetings like to do that for some reason. Also, and on a more general basis, it's once you get a message that has been approved, then you got the roots back into dogmatism. And there's many atheists who are pretty dogmatic about other things in Alcoholics Anonymous. And then it will be, again, things that can't be written or said in introductions, or cards that can't be shown in meetings. I think it's great that individual meetings decide on their own basis. And we leave it like that. We leave it like different cells. And that way we have diversity, we have unity, but not uniformity. I think standardization will lead to uniformity, and thereby pressure again into dogmatism of a different sort. Additionally, regarding literature, just my thoughts just now, I think, are that I understand why people may want it to get it conference approved, but I mean, what does that mean? It's just a bunch of people like us who say this is okay and that isn't. And at best, I think at most, I personally would say that perhaps a suggested reading list where people who are secular could go to as a first point of call. But you'll get the same situation again if all of that becomes conference approved and someone else wants to read from a different book. Some people will come and say that's not conference approved and we shouldn't read it. We'll just end up in, AA 2.0 rather than a freer, more intellectually free-thinking organization. Yeah, that's all I've got. Thank you.
Thank you, John. Free thinkers in AA, would you like to unmute yourself?
Sure. Thank you, Karen. My name is Jeb, and I'm a grateful recovered alcoholic. And I really appreciate what's happening today. The discussion about the God word is really important because our group is also one that submitted a request to our district and then to the Area 10 to be sent to the Literature Committee requesting this pamphlet be made available. Unfortunately, I think the people who really need that pamphlet never pick it up. And those are people in traditional meetings because it really, just like some of the other things that Grapevine has produced. I'm a big book thumper. I've always been known as a big book thumper, but I'm also a fundamentalist in the sense that it's what's behind the experience, strength, and hope that Bill Wilson and others wrote in that first edition, and then the second printing when they added Appendix 2, spiritual experience. Because that's the path that I have used for 42 years plus to structure my life and become a different kind of person, to experience that personality change sufficient to bring about recovery, to find the great reality that is even hidden in the literature deep within, that unsuspected resource, so that I never have to refer to a higher power, something out there, but I know where that power is. It's within me. And that's what I always tell people when they first come in. The purpose of going through the drudgery of learning how to use the step process outlined on pages 60 through 88 is going to help you to find that power. And it will be yours, not somebody else's. So I'm so encouraged by the honesty that is coming out in these Zoom meetings, the secular AA meetings, grateful to everyone who's making them possible and sharing the variety of recovery experiences, reminding me of Jim Burwell's story in the big book, A Vicious Cycle, which does outline the various things that people tried, and then if they would try something else, if something didn't work, you go on. And I think that's probably a big part of what I've done my whole life and the different chapters of my recovery, that I'm a different person today than I was 40 years ago or 30 or 20 because of continuing to use the tools, all 12 tools, not just 3 or putting them in the past tense. That makes a huge difference. So I'm hopeful for the future of AA, which certainly needs reformation, not rebellion. That's my personal experience. It's 15,442 days, one day at a time, because you've taught me and they have taught me how to do it. Thanks so much.
Hi, everybody. Christina, alcoholic. I've got about 3 years. I just wanted to touch on the idea that we were talking about before of whether or not to split off or become separate. I got sober 3 years ago by, thankfully, having my very first meeting ever be the atheists, agnostics, and all others located here in Idaho. Let me tell you, here in Idaho, every other group is that kind of group that make you want to peel your faces off. I mean, if I had walked into any other room, I would be dead today. I never would have gotten sober. So the idea of offering an alternative, a location that's really well known, you flip through the yellow pages or whatever when you're desperately drunk, you're not looking for those smaller groups. AA is the most widely known. And because our group incorporates all others, we have Buddhists, we have disenfranchised Hindus, Muslims, you name it. It's really just the spectrum of everyone that's not included in that, what I believe to be very Christ-centric, not even God-centric, but Christ-centric type of format that is so typical to the AA program. So when our meeting starts off with much of the verbiage that you saw posted earlier, and then midway through, we take turns every week reading an alternative version of the 12 steps. And we try and introduce topics that really let anyone in attendance understand that they can talk about things that they don't talk about in other groups. It really, truly is about free thinking. And I got to tell you, we have had people, we're kind of confrontational people out here in Idaho. Don't know if you've heard much about my peers out here, but a lot of gun toting, a lot of, I'll show you my opinion with my weapon. So we get people that have come into our meeting with notebooks and they've got their Bible, and they're just kind of ready to come in and see if we're slaughtering goats. And when they sit still for a few minutes and they hear our shares, we have had several people, groups even, that have come in and shared at the end of the group and said, you know what, my name is so-and-so. And I was very skeptical. I came here tonight expecting to see some, real godlessness in this, traditional sense that I thought. And really what I just heard was a fellowship of people with the same kind of stories I have and just sharing their ideas. It's extraordinary how you can change minds. And so the idea of detaching ourselves permanently is such a disservice, not just to the suffering atheists, but to the suffering everybody's that are not traditional Christians. And so it's important to remember that the atheists are not the only ones being disenfranchised by the very traditional structure of AA. And I think the only way to change it is from the inside out. I'm in a group that's personally doing that every week. I could not be more grateful to the founders of my home group because they saved my life. And just being at a conference like this with all the rest of you makes me think, there's a sane world out there. I'm so excited. Thank you for letting me share.
Eric Lee, Michigan, would you like to unmute yourself?
Yes, thanks. I'm Eric. I'm an alcoholic from Traverse City, Michigan. In 2018, the Secular Sobriety Group of Traverse City sent a small delegation down to the mock General Service Conference, which is held in our state, to kind of duplicate what happens at the General Service Conference. I sat on the Literature Committee and argued for adoption of the God Word. Learned in committee that only 2 of our 3 actual delegates to the General Service Conference were going to support adoption of it, and argued both in committee and from the floor and flipped a delegate before they went to New York to finally adopt it. So that's one of the advantages of being part of AA. Anymore, we use the pamphlet in our group. We've put a little sticker on the bottom that says, "We're the Secular Sobriety Group. This is conference approved, boys and girls." And we put it at all of the Alano clubs around town in their little literature thing, and we take them with us to other traditional meetings and say, "Check out our meeting sometime." And we've attracted some members that way. We've also taken this around and some other information to our local court system, because quite frankly, in our neck of the woods, that's where most of our newcomers come from. And a lot of judges are becoming aware that they are obligated under the law to provide a secular alternative to Alcoholics Anonymous. And we say, we want the hand of AA always to be there, and we're not alternative to AA, but we are secular AA. And anybody who is objecting to being sentenced to going to AA meetings on religious grounds can feel comfortable in our group. So every one of our judges, every one of our probation officers in our part of Michigan has a copy of this and a little notice about our meeting down there and some other information. The other thing we've been able to do is set an example. Our group meets at an Alano club where a bunch of other traditional meetings meet, and we do go to other meetings. We set an example for other groups who will say, "Well, we're not religious." "Oh, really? Are you as not religious as us?" And have actually convinced some of them to stop saying the Lord's Prayer, because what we do at our group is we do sacrifice a goat. We have a little stuffed goat, and during the Zoom meetings, we close in the usual manner by doing this. So that's all I got for you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Eric. Well, unfortunately, if you didn't get a chance to share, I apologise, but we will have to wrap up now. And if you're going to go to the It Came From Our Past AA History panel, exit this room and re-enter the Beyond Belief room, where that meeting will begin in a few minutes. Anyone, anytime can visit the ICSA, that's the International Conference of Secular AA Virtual Lounge, to chat with friends or have your questions answered. Please will you help me in thanking our panel.